rise for the arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
Senate will now be in session. The second session of the Senate, the second regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. We have with us today, we'll ask our Majority Floor Leader to say a prayer for the body.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Dakilang Diyos, Ama naming sumasalangit, kami po ay nagpapakumbaba at lumalapit sa iyong paanan, humihingi ng saklolo at tawad sa anumang kasalanan na aming nagawa. Linisin mo po kami ng iyong banal na dugo na nabuho sa krus ng Kalbaryo at hayaan yung madamitan niyo po kami ng damit ng katwiran upang makalapit po kami sa iyo ngayong araw na ito. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon na ibinigay niyo para makapagtrabaho kami at maibigay ang aming very best for our country and people. Maraming salamat po sa katatapos lamang na panalo na iyong ibinigay sa aming Philippine football team dito sa World Cup na kung saan ay ginapi ng aming Philippine team ang host country New Zealand sa world football stage. Maraming salamat din po sa mga pagkakataon na ibinigay mo sa amin upang makapagtrabaho at oportunidad para paglingkuran ang aming mga kababayan. Sa iyo pong mga kamay, iniahabilin namin ang lahat ng aming gagawin dito sa bulwagang ito at aming mga gagawin pa para sa aming mga kababayang Pilipino. Sa iyo po ang papuri at pasasalamat as we carefully give back to you all the glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Before we call the roll, we'd just like to second that statement by the Majority Floor Leader. Congratulations to the Philippine women's football team for the great win against the host country New Zealand in the FIFA World Cup this afternoon. Secretary, please call the roll of members.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 20 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before I move to dispense with the reading of the journal, may I take this opportunity, Mr. President, to greet our colleagues who celebrated their birthdays during the break. Last June 14, Senator Bongo celebrated his birthday. Happy birthday. And last July 15, Senator Sani Angara celebrated his 21st birthday, Mr. President. May I move for a minute suspension, Mr. President?
Maybe we can continue with the,
Yes, Mr. President.
we have guests, we have special guests.
Yes, Mr. President, I will submit to your wisdom, Mr. President. We also would like to acknowledge the Honorable, the presence, Mr. President, of the Honorable Kim Jin-pyo, Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea. The Honorable Lee Dal-gon, Member of the National Assembly. The Honorable Kim Byung-ji, Member of the National Assembly. The Honorable Oh Gi-ko, Member of the National Assembly. They are accompanied, Mr. President, by His Excellency Lee Sang-hwa, Korean Ambassador to the Philippines.
To the delegation of parliamentarians and members of the Assembly of the Republic of Korea, headed by Speaker Kim Jin-pyo, we are very honored to have you this afternoon. And also, we'd like to inform the body that this year marks the 74th anniversary of diplomatic, 73rd, or 74th, rather, anniversary of diplomatic ties and bilateral cooperations between our two countries, Philippines and the Great Republic of Korea. After more than 7 decades, our relations remain strong and robust in the areas of development and infrastructure, trade and investments, defense cooperation, as well as in the creative industries and people-to-people exchanges. Our bilateral relations are rooted in history, described as a brotherhood forged in blood, dating back to the Korean War, where 7,420 Filipinos, headed by our former president, President Fidel V. Ramos, fought alongside Korean troops to help defend the nation from invaders beyond. Over the years, this brotherhood has further revitalized by leaders, officials, and peoples of both countries, leading to the current excellent state of Philippine and Republic of Korea bilateral relations. And I'd like to put on record that we are very close in approving our strategic alliance with Korea, both in defense and in trade. So once again, welcome to the Philippine Senate, our dear Speaker, and I will now suspend session and ask our visitors, especially the Speaker of the Parliament of Korea, to join me in the podium for a photo opportunity.
Thank you, Mr.
Session
President.
is suspended.
Thank you.
We'd like to ask all our colleagues and the members of the watching today to settle down. Let's be accused again of being lacking of.
Thank you, Mr.
Decorum.
President. Mr. President, thank you very
But
much,
before
Mr.
we continue, Majority Leader, if you don't mind, I just want to acknowledge on the gallery as well, my dear friends, the 9-time world shooting champion, undefeated since he was 18 or 15 or 18 years old. I'm not sure. No other than Mr. Eric Graffel is with us today, and of his son Robin. Together with him is Martin Tuason and beautiful wife Tammy and daughter Olivia. And so I know a lot of Filipinos are training hard to be able to beat Eric, but no one has yet beaten him. And the best thing that he has done is recruited Filipinos for Team CZ. And again, welcome to your Senate, gentlemen. Welcome to the Philippine Senate. And thank you for teaching our Filipino shooters the techniques that have made you a champion for decades. So welcome to the Philippine Senate. I just have to put on record, I'm a shooter, so he's my master. I'm only the Padawan. But I know Senator Bato de la Rosa and Senator Mark Villar and myself had a great time training with this gentleman. So, and I believe Edsel Gino, who happens to be the son-in-law of Senator Bato de la Rosa, is now part of Team CZ. So, Majority Floor Leader, once again, welcome to the Senate, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I might as well greet some guests from the gallery, Mr. President. We have with us Governor Nino Uy of Davao Oriental, Mayor Datu Lester Sinsuat of Datu Odin Sinsuat, Maguindanao del Norte. We also have with us, Mr. President, former Governor and Congressman Roy Padilla of Camarines Norte, the brother of our dear colleague, Senator Robin Padilla, Governor James Eduba of Kalinga, Mayor Conchita Toribio de los Reyes of Carmen Bohol, Board Member Nathaniel Binlod of the 3rd District of Bohol, local government of Kidapawan City led by Vice Mayor Melvin Lamata is also here. Mr. President, members of the Omega de Salonera under the Socorro Bayanihan Services Inc., they were crowned as Grand Champion in the 2023 Powerful Daegu Festival in South Korea. Also with us, Mr. President, from Pentecostal Mission Church of Christ, Fourth Watch, Mr. President, our good friend, Bishop Jonathan Ferriol, Deputy Executive Minister, Bishop Aldrin Palanga, Bishop Reynaldo Sulayad. We welcome all of them, Mr. President, in this August chamber.
Yes, so they're all welcome to their Senate.
Thank you.
Salamat po sa pagbisita ninyo dito.
Thank you, Mr. President. This juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the first session, Monday, July 24, 2023, and consider the same as approved.
There being no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I now move that we proceed with the reference of business.
There being no objection, we ask the Secretary to proceed with the reference of business.
Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 29 May 2023, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 8203, modernizing the Bureau of Immigration by defining its powers and functions, further professionalizing its organization, upgrading the compensation and benefits of its officials and employees, appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Justice, Human Rights, Civil Service, and Finance.
8278, revitalizing the salt industry, creating a comprehensive plan for its development, providing incentives to salt farmers, producers, and exporters, appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Agriculture, Food and Agrarian Reform, Trade and Commerce, Ways and Means of Finance.
198, providing for the revised warehouse receipts law of the Philippines.
To the Committees on Trade and Commerce and Finance.
451, encouraging corporate social responsibility, providing incentives therefore.
To the Committees on Trade and Commerce and Entrepreneurship.
7754, reverting fish ponds which have been unutilized or abandoned for a period of 3 years to forest lands, amending section 43 of PD 705.
To the Committees on Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change.
7819, declaring the maritime zones under the jurisdiction of the Republic of the Philippines.
To the Committees on Foreign Relations, National Defense and Security, peace unification.
7941, promoting the development of the bamboo industry by strengthening the Philippine Bamboo Industry Development Council, creating the Bamboo Industry Research and Development Center, providing incentives and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Trade and Commerce, Ways and Means and Finance.
7942, establishing an agriculture information system in all cities and municipalities.
To the Committees on Agriculture, Local Government and Finance.
8144, defining the crime of tax racketeering and providing penalties therefore, amending Section 257 of the NIRC.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
8204, providing the regulatory framework to conserve, protect, restore, and sustainably manage peatlands and their resources to enhance the country's resilience to climate change.
Committees on Environment, Natural Resources and Finance.
8325, establishing the Overseas Filipino Workers Hospital as a Level 3 hospital under the direct supervision and control of the Department of Migrant Workers and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Migrant Workers, Health, Demography and Finance.
And House bills declaring ecotourism destination zone 7549 Sinulong Falls as ecotourism destination, 8033 Barangay Bucari ecotourism zone, 8034 Twin Islands San Pedro and San Pablo ecotourism zones, 8035 Tagbak Marine Park ecotourism zone, 8036 Barangay Napantao an ecotourism zone.
To the Committees
Misamis
on,
Oriental at Tourism Development Area.
to the Committees on Tourism, Environment and Finance.
8064, declaring Cagayan de Oro River and Simic environs a cultural heritage and tourism zone.
To the Committees on Culture, Tourism and Finance.
Migtuksok Falls,
Oh, I'd like to correct the House Bill number 8063, which was last mentioned by the Secretary, is referred to the Committees on Tourism, Public Works and Finance.
8064, Cagayan de Oro River and its immediate environs a cultural heritage and tourism zone.
To the Committee on Culture and Arts, Tourism and Finance.
8065, Migtuksok Falls, Cagayan de Oro City ecotourism site.
To the Committees on Tourism, Environment and Finance.
3401, establishing a district office of the LTO in Pototan, Iloilo, appropriating funds therefore. And 8152, converting the Las Piñas Land Transportation Office into licensing extension office into a regular LTO licensing center.
To the Committees on Public Service and Finance.
And the following House bills establishing multi-species marine hatchery, 7101, multi-species marine hatchery in Sagay, Negros Occidental. 8119, multi-species fish hatchery in Naik, Cavite. 8120, multi-species marine hatchery in Unangan, Southern Leyte. 8121, marine hatchery in Pintuyan, Southern Leyte. 8122, marine hatchery in Santa Catalina, Ilocos Sur. 8123, multi-species marine hatchery, Cabadbaran, Agusan del Norte. 8124, marine hatchery in Carmen, Agusan del Norte. 8125, multi-species freshwater fish hatchery in Asingan, Pangasinan. 8126, multi-species freshwater hatchery in Balungaw, Pangasinan. 8127, multi-species freshwater hatchery in Natividad, Pangasinan. 8128, multi-species freshwater fish hatchery in Tayug, Pangasinan. 8129 in Umingan, Pangasinan. 8130 in Aloran, Misamis Occidental. 8131 in Oroquieta, Misamis Occidental. And 8132 in San Miguel, Surigao del Sur.
To the Committees on Agriculture, Food and Finance.
1309, converting the Mayon Southeast Quadrant Road in Daraga and the city of Legazpi, all in the province of Albay, into a national road appropriating funds therefore.
To the committee, I think, to the Committees on Public Works and Finance. This is-
8080, establishing 4-lane viaduct or bypass road in San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. 8107, converting the road stretching from Daang Maharlika Junction to the barangays of Ilawod, Bagumbayan, Kiwalo, Gabayan, Tabon-Tabon Road in Daraga, Albay into a national and appropriating funds therefore. And 8133, creating a district engineering office in the 2nd Legislative District of Davao City and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Public Works and Finance.
7839,
You can read the short titles of these measures.
Yes, sir.
Secretary.
Bills establishing test dot training and assessment centers, 7839 in Barangay Kamanman, Cagayan de Oro, 7904 Tagkawayan, Province of Quezon, 7905 Bayumbong, Nueva Vizcaya, 7906 Minalaba, Camarines Sur, 7907 Labangan, Zamboanga del Sur.
To the Committees on Higher Technical Vocational Education and Finance.
House number 8214, establishing in the city of Lucena, province of Quezon, a general hospital to be known as the Lucena City Hospital and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Health and Demography and Finance.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 24 May 2023, designated Representatives Primicias Agabas, Aquino Magsaysay, Roman, Dagook, and Bustos as conferees to the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House number 7939 and Senate 1480.
To the Archives, rather.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 24 May 2023, designated Representatives Marino, Escudero, Rodriguez, Revilla, Legarda Jr., Arroganza, and Abalos as conferees to the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House number 1171 and Senate number 1594.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on May 24, 2023, designated Representatives Go, Sumulong, Swansing, Roque, and Magsino as conferees to the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House number 6483, House number 7584, and Senate number 1359.
To the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 29 May 2023, designated Representatives Gato Jr., Goles Jr., and Castro as conferees to the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House number 7751 and Senate number 2212.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 24 May 2023, it ratified the Conference Committee report on the Disagreeing Provisions of House number 5110 and Senate number 1841.
To the Archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 30 May 2023, adopted Senate number 2219 as an amendment to House number 7909.
To the Archives.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2265, defining untruthful statement and fabricated evidence before Congress in the conduct of their legislative and oversight functions committed by military and uniformed personnel and other government personnel and providing penalties therefore, Senator Padilla.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
2266, establishing the Bulacan Airport City Special Economic Zone and Freeport, Province of Bulacan, appropriating funds therefore by Senator Zubiri.
To the Committee on Economic Affairs, Local Government, Ways and Means and Finance.
2268, providing free insurance for covered applicants of overseas employment certificates, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Lapid.
To Committee on Migrant Workers and Finance.
Committee report 91, jointly by the Committees on Energy, Environment, Natural Resources, and Climate Change, Ways and Means and Finance, of Senate number 2267, with Senators Tulfo, Gatchalian, Tolentino, Revilla Jr., and Zubiri as authors thereof, establishing a national energy policy and regulatory framework for facilities utilizing waste-to-energy technologies, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 151, 177, 989, and 1746, Senator Tulfo.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 694, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 696, and for the Secretary to read the title of the measure. This is the resolution congratulating your Senate Sentinels, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you. There being no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, the distinguished Secretary can read the title of the resolution.
Resolution congratulating and commending the Senate Sentinels for winning its first UNTV Cup Executive Face-Off on July 23, 2023 at the Field Sports Arena in Pasig City.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize our
Thanks, brother. Thanks.
most supportive individual in this August chamber, our Senate President, Juan Miguel Zubiri, to deliver his sponsorship speech.
May I ask the Majority Leader to sit in for me for 1 minute? Session suspended.
Our distinguished Senate President, Juan Miguel Zubiri.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader, our presiding officer. It is with great pride that I stand here today to sponsor this resolution. It's like a father congratulating his son. Congratulating, of course, and commending our very own Senate Sentinels for emerging as the champions of this year's UNTV Cup Executive Face-Off in a historic victory marking our first time to win the cup. Napakagandang salubong ng panalong ito sa ating pagbubukas ng second regular session because it happened the day before the start of our second regular session. I made sure to catch the game last Sunday night with my wife Audrey and my two boys, and we were with Senator Frank Drilon, Tito Frank, as well as Senator Jingo Estrada, and it was a very exciting match against the PNP responders. You know, I'd like to put here, it's not in my speech, when I spoke to Senator Frank Drilon, sabi ko, magagaling ang PNP. Ang sagot na sa akin ni former Senate President Drilon is, Migs, 200,000 ang pwede nilang pilian ng teams, nakukunan ng members sa team nila. Ang Senado, 2,000 lamang. But nevertheless, we did the win. We got the win last Sunday. Kung kilala natin ang ating mga senador, mga direktor, mga attorney at mga kaopisina bilang masisipag at maaasahang mga trabahador sa plenaryo o sa iba't ibang mga Senate offices, ganyan rin po ang galing na ipinakita nila sa basketball court for their championship win. And these, ladies and gentlemen, are members that are not professional basketball players. Ito po ang mga doktor natin dito, mga direktor, members of OSAA, and of course, our very own members of the Senate. So to our whole team, namely, Senators Sonny Angara, Majority Leader Joel Villanueva, and the constant shouting of the crowd, BG, BG, Senator Bongo, and Senator Mark Villar. He's a member of the team. He's a member of the team.
Yeah.
Director General Ronald Golding. Deputy Secretary Joey Flaminiano. Director Albert Cruz. Director Renato Sison Jr. Attorney Patrick Paraoan. Jonel Sangalang. Ashley Asedillo. Reynante Langit Jr. Christian Andaya. Daniel Diamzon, Javier Laiz, Warren Tan, Benjamin Navea Jr., and Ray Malaga Jr., who happens to be the security aide of Senator Angara. Tama? Yeah, he's a security aide. Magaling na
He's
player.
the finals MVP.
MVP, no? MVP.
Finals MVP.
Binabantayan na si Sunny, nagbabasketball pa. 2-in-1. Congratulations at saludo kami sa inyong lahat. We also recognize the leadership and efforts of head coach Michael Agustin Fermin and assistant coaches Carlos Fermin, Alexis Barrera, at sa lahat ng non-playing support staff. Yung nagmamasahe kay Senator Sonny Angara. Mga malulusog natin, mga medical team galing sa Senado na talagang napabuhay ang ating mga players dahil sa galing po nila sa paghihilot. Thanks as well. Thanks to the team's victory, makakapagbigay sila ng 1 million pesos. Ladies and gentlemen, hindi lang pong pagkatuwaan kasi minsan nababasa mo sa comments, ano ba yan? Wala ba silang trabaho? Nagbabasketball lang sila? Well, I'd like to tell the critics, they all work during the day and they play hard at night, out of office hours. But at the same time, they earned 1 million pesos na ibibigay po natin sa mga charitable foundations, namely, Tahanan Walang Hagdanan, the Keith, did I pronounce it right? Keith Foundation Incorporated, and the Senate Spouses Foundation, Inc. So this is not just a win for the team or the Senate, but for all the beneficiaries of these foundations as well. A great win for a worthy cause. But also, I'd like to take note that the PNP also did a valiant job of defending their championship. I believe they were champions last year.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I mentioned. So the PNP were also the defending champions. So it was really a great win. We had some scary moments. As a matter of fact, when I was watching in the beginning, from the beginning, the first 10 minutes, ako ininervyos para sa inyo. Dahil hingal na kayo. Sabi ko sa ating doktor, Doc Nuts, bantayan natin na mabuti yung mga senador at mga employees natin at baka kung may mangyari pa sa kanila. But you know what? Their second win came into play at ang ganda ng recovery natin all the way to the very end from the three-point shooting and the assists and the passes done by our three senators, Senator Bongo, Senator Joel Villanueva, and Senator Sani Angara. Ang gagaling po nila na pwedeng pang PBA po ang mga laro nila. And not to mention that their day job is being a member of the Senate. Finally, I want to thank the Senate community who supported the team during the championship game and throughout the lead up to it. It was so beautiful to see our Senate staff and their families all there that night coming together to cheer our team on, proving that we are not just co-workers here, but a tight-knit and supportive Senate family as well. So again, I congratulate our Senate Sentinels and we assure you of our whole Senate's untiring support always. Yung bonus, ako nang bahala dyan. Yeah. Pero personal ko yan, hindi pera na Senado yan. Anyway, nakasama ba yung nanood? Di Jingoy lang ang bibigyan natin. Joke lang. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, congratulations to the Senate team. A job well done. These three foundations that will be getting the support that you'll be giving through the 1 million pesos will go a long way. Mabuhay po kayo. May God bless your hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sali ako susunod, ha?
May video eh. There's a video.
May be given permission by the body to show just the highlights of the game. Maybe you can walk us through this, Majority Leader.
We've been waiting for this, di ba? Makita natin ngayon kung ano tayo. We're happy for this, we want this, and we will get this tonight.
Yeah. So hustle lang guys, hustle. Kasi ano sila, they're fasting.
So we have to hustle for position. We have to hustle for position on rebounds. We have to hustle for position on defense. Find space, pero be ready to get the pass. Be ready to shoot. Be in a place where pagkatanggap mo.
So, guys, yung opensa, madali. Yung depensa, yan ang talagang kailangan natin. Hustle lang sila ng time na makabawi tayo. Katulad ng Gilas, talo sila ng elimination. Bawi sa semis tayo, nakabawi tayo sa OP.
Yes.
Sa next time, makakabawi din tayo sa PNP.
Angara bottled up, creates and scores! Oh boy, what a game! Trying to ball hawk. Villanueva is being banned. He creates and scores. Mayabos. Oh!
Mike Fermi.
Mike. Sino si Joy Fermi? Actually, dating principal. Basketball tournament.
Salamat sa Diyos, tayo nakaraos. Sa inyo pong lahat, congratulations sa Senate Sentinels, of course sa ating PNP at sa lahat po ng participants ng UNTV Cup Executive Face-Off. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng sumuporta and of course sa lahat po ng ating mga kapatid din sa MCGI. Keep on shining!
First time, glory to God. Thank you, UNTV. Thank you, Kuya Daniel. Thank you, Senate President, Mrs. Audrey Zubiri, and the whole team, and the supporters ng Senate. Salamat din sa PNP responders. Maraming salamat. God bless.
Napakasarap ng pakiramdam mag-champion. First time kong sumali sa Senate team. Champion pa. Salamat sa lahat ng supporters.
Sa mga teammates ko, the best kayo. We're champions! And syempre, hindi natin nakakalimutan, Kuya Daniel Rason, ang author ng UNTV Cup. Saludo kami sa inyo, sir. To God be all glory.
Mga kababayan, unang-una nagpapasalamat muli ako kay UNTV because itong 1 million pesos, ibibigay po namin to sa Senate spouses. Marami po tayong mga beneficiaries para sa mga unfortunate mga kababayan natin na nangangailangan ng tulong. Kaya this will go to a good cause. We promise that. And we thank the Senate Sentinels for delivering. At lahat ng mga players ng Senate Sentinels, mabuhay kayo!
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, Mr. President.
Congratulations once again.
If I may, Mr. President, just to thank all of you on behalf of our team, Mr. President, we'd like to thank our Senate President, the leader of the Senate, for being with us all the way. Since the very beginning, Mr. President, hindi pa ho kayo Senate President noon, and you've been avid supporter of the Senate basketball team together with Senator Frank Drilon and Senator Jinggoy, who also went out of his way, Mr. President, and he himself doesn't believe, Mr. President, that we will win. That's why he left the game in the after
Medyo
the
dehado na
first
kayo,
half.
no?
Yes, Mr.
Malis na si
President.
Jinggoy.
Yes,
Senator
Mr.
Jinggoy.
President. Pero babawi daw siya, Mr. President. Tatapatan daw niya yung pabonus niya, Mr. President.
Ayun, very good.
But kidding aside, Mr. President, let me take this opportunity to thank my dear colleague, Senator Sani Angara, our inspirational leader on and off the court. Siya yung pinaka-senior sa amin, Mr. President, as a basketball player in this Senate basketball team. We have been champions for 3 consecutive times, Mr. President. Kulang na po yung trophy ng ating museum dito sa Senado, kaya lilipat na daw po tayo next year, sabi ni Senator Nancy. Salamat din po kay Senator Bongo, Mr. President. Malaking tulong at talagang grabe ho yung sakripisyo, Mr. President, ng inyong mga senators. Alam nyo naman po, kahit na may session, kailangan pumunta pa sa practice. Kahit na may gustong magsalitang senator, nakikiusap na kami, may practice kami, pero ayaw pa rin papigil. Hihintayin pa ho namin matapos yung speech niya. Pero okay lang po, Mr. President, kaya salamat na rin po. Mr. President, yung cash prize na 1 million will benefit, binanggit nyo kanina, yung Tahanang Walang Hagdan, Rehabilitation and Skills Training Center, which aims to uplift the lives of persons with disability. Yung Kite Foundation, whose goals are to improve the quality of life of hospitalized children with cancer and other chronic illnesses. And of course, yung Senate Spouses Foundation, salamat din kay Boss Audrey. Tsaka yung dalawang chikiting nyo, Mr. President, especially kay Santito, inspired kami sa kanya nung nanood po siya. So, Mr. President, muli, maraming salamat po. If Senator Bongo and Senator Sani Angara would also... Mr. President, muli maraming salamat.
We'd like to see, before we end, we'd just like to see more senators join the team. Sana Senator Bato daw gusto sumali, Senator Jinggoy, di ba? Pero check up muna.
And there's a disclaimer. Mr. President, there's a disclaimer from Senator Bato de la Rosa. Wala daw po siya dun sa game kasi marami nagsasabi nag-cheer daw po siya sa PNP.
Ayun
Hindi
nga.
po siya yun. Hindi po siya yun, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Sabi po ni Senator Bato, hindi po siya yun. Mr. President, at this juncture, no other member wishes to interpolate or propose any amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 694, taking into consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 696, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion or amendments to the motion, to the resolution, therefore, Senator Bongo would like to. After. So we'd like to, again, reiterate, there's a motion, no objections. The proposed Senate Resolution number 694, taking consideration proposed Senate Resolution number 696 is hereby adopted. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before we recognize Senator Bongo, Mr. President, may I move that every member of this August chamber, every senator be made co-authors and co-sponsor of the measure. So move, Mr. President.
Including Senator Bato, even though he was a former PNP general.
Including Senator Pia Cayetano, who texted me, Mr.
Yes,
President.
of course.
He is now in New Zealand supporting our football team.
Yes.
He wanted to be a co-author of this measure.
Yes, absolutely. All 24 members are, we take note and all 24 members are.
I now move that we recognize Senator Bongo, Mr. President.
Senator Bongo is recognized.
Yeah.
Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, as chairman of the Senate Committee on Sports and member of the Senate Sentinels, I thank this chamber led by our Senate President for the commendation that it has extended to the Senate Sentinels. I also filed a resolution expressing my gratitude to all members of the team, including the coaching staff, medical team, and support staff. First time ko pong sumali sa Senate team para sa UNTV Cup at nakakatuwa po na nag-champion tayo ngayon. Nagpapasalamat po ako sa mga kasamahan natin sa kanilang suporta. I want to also take the opportunity to convey my utmost respect and admiration for the exceptional display of skill of my fellow colleagues in this esteemed chamber, our most senior in age and in playing years, Senator Sani Angara, who plays so much dynamism and was awarded, congratulations, as part of the mythical 5 po ng UNTV Cup. Siya po yung 5 top players po ng UNTV Cup. And of course, kahit injured, halos araw-araw nagpapa-PT, rehab. Si Majority Floor Leader Senator Joel Villanueva naman po, who is our all-around player and clutch scorer, especially in crucial moments when such performance is most required. Talaga naman pong napakahusay na maglaro nitong ating mga senador na ito. And of course, ang ating mga kasamahan, no, si Senator Mark Villar, this only serves as a testament that their skill and prowess go beyond the confines of our plenary hall, but also extend to the basketball court. Gusto ko rin po i-acknowledge ang lahat ng team members who participated and showcased their outstanding performance inside the basketball arena. Nakakatuwa po, paglabas mo dito sa plenary, nandiyan dyan yung nagbubukas ng pinto sa iyo, masayang masaya, yung ating sentro. Pagpunta mo po sa CA, nandun yung mga ibang kasamahan natin, si Director General Ronald Golding, Deputy Secgen Joey Plaminiano, our shooter, our Alan Kaidik, Director Albert Sanz Cruz, Director Renato Sison Jr., Attorney Patrick Parawan, Junel Sanggalang, sa office po ni Senator Rafi Tulfo, napakagaling rin po. Si Senator Rafi nag-training nito. Ashley Asidilio, Reynante Langit Jr., Benji Navea, Javier Lais, Christian Andaya, Daniel Diamson, Warren Tan, Mark Macabasco, at syempre po ang ating finals MVP, si Reynaldo Malaga, sa office po ni Senator Angara. Similarly, I also extend my utmost gratitude to our medical team. Kahit na tinahi na po yung ulo ni JR Langit, ito po silang umaalalay parate who demonstrates dedication in ensuring our safety at all costs. Bianca Marie Dato, Anthony Abelita, Richard Dino, of the Medical and Dental Bureau. Of course, to the support staff of the Senate Sentinels, Rhea Joy Ladublan, Michelle Torres, Jeffrey Magtoto, Michael Cruz, and L'Oreal Gutay. Lastly, ang ating coaching staff na sina Head Coach Mike Fermin, Assistant Coach Tata Fermin, and Assistant Coach Alexis Barrera. Mr. President, isa pong karangalan ang mapabilang sa Senate Sentinels. I would also like to give my credit to my teammates sa galing, husay at sportsmanship, camaraderie all throughout the tournament. Sarap po ng pakiramdam, lalong-lalo po na 80% sa crowd ay sumusuporta po sa ating team. Gusto ko rin pong bigyang pagpupugay ang ating mga naging katunggali sa tournament na ito. PNP responders na tumalo po sa amin sa elimination, OP PMS executives, AFP Cavaliers, Judiciary Magis, Ombudsman Graph Busters, and GSIS Furies. Maraming salamat din po sa ating mga kasamahan dito sa Senado na nagpakita ng kanilang suporta at pumunta ng final game led by our Senate President Mig Zubiri. Sir, maraming salamat. Former Senate President Franklin Drilon and Senator Jingo Estrada na inalok po naming 3 ng aming serbisyo ng libre para kunin kami sa San Juan Knights. Pero hanggang ngayon, ayaw pa rin niya kaming kunin. Baka mag-champion na yung San Juan Knights mo. At maraming salamat rin po sa mga kasama natin, Senator Rafi Tulfo, Senator Risa Ontiveros, Senator Coco Pimentel, Senator Grace Po, Senator Nancy Binay, Senator Loren Ligarda, Senator Jingo Estrada, Senator Lito Lapid, Senator Win Gatchalian, Senator Bong Revilla, Senator Tol Tolentino, Senator Amy Marcos, Senator Cynthia Villar, Senator Robin Padilla, and si Senator Bato de la Rosa na dapat po'y dumalo nung finals. Pero sabi niya ayaw niya pong maipit sa dalawang koponan. Sabi niya pagkatabi niya ang Senate, suporta siya sa Senate. Pagkatabi niya ang PNP, suporta siya sa PNP. Nene. Matagal na 15 years ko na po nakakalaro yung team ni Senator Bato, including yung mga players po ng PNP responders na napaka-galing po. Wala na ba akong nalimutang Senator? Wala na ba akong nakalimutang kasamahan natin sa Senator Alan Cayetano, Senator Pia Cayetano. Lastly, nagpapasalamat po ako sa organizers ng UNTV Cup Executive Face-Off sa pangunguna ni Kuya Daniel Rason at Commissioner Atoy Ko, Deputy Commissioner Ed Cordero sa pamamagitan ng mga sports tournament kagaya nito. Mas maingganyo natin ang ating mga kababayan na bigyan ng importansya ang sports. Dahil din sa panalo natin sa tournament na ito, makakatulong din tayo sa ating mga chosen beneficiaries, tahanang walang hagdanan, Kate Foundation at Senate Spouses Foundation led by our First Lady Ma'am Audrey Zubiri. Nakakataba po ng puso na sa ating panalo ay marami po tayong matutulungan. Once again, nakalimutan ko si Senator JV Ejercito rin po. Salamat rin po sa inyong suporta. Once again, maraming salamat po sa parangal na ito para po ito sa buong Senado. Thank you, Mr. President.
Kalimutan mo Senator Mark Villar.
Senator Mark Villar, kasama po sa team.
Sa team.
Kasama po siya sa team.
Ma'am Grace?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a manifestation and also a clarificatory question. Just my manifestation that I congratulate the team. For those that are saying that, well, we have a lot of work to do. Of course, we do have a lot of work, but we also encourage a very active lifestyle.
Yes.
And I hope that there will also be active sports for the women. If not very active, maybe we can do some shooting. Since we had our guest here, that would be
Or paddle,
that would be good.
the one of Senator Pia, what is that? The paddle board?
Or
Paddle-
pickleball.
No, paddle tennis? Paddle tennis.
Paddle meron, okay. So anything that we can encourage also women to have a team sport here in the Senate, or maybe we have, but we're not aware of it. But I also would like to ask the majority leader with regards to his manifestation earlier. He mentioned that, you know, we want to have a good work-life balance, but then sometimes our team members couldn't really attend practice early enough because they had to stay to listen to some of our colleagues. May I ask who the majority leader is referring to? Is it me or?
I will put on record, Mr. President, that it's not the distinguished lady from Pangasinan and Iloilo.
So,
Because she's been very supportive. And with that, Mr. President, I will also mention the senators and their respective offices that gave their support, not just moral support, but even in kind or in cash, Mr. President. We have Senator Coco Pimentel, our minority leader, Senator Tulfo, Senator Revilla, Senator Bato, Semco, Mr. President, and now the Senate President Pro Tempore is asking me how she can help, Mr. President.
There you go.
Mr. President, I don't believe that the gentleman from Bulacan has really answered my question or has stated for the record that he refuses to answer my question.
I made mention, Mr. President, that she's not the one I'm referring to,
Oh,
but
okay.
there are a couple of senators, Mr. President, who loves to deliver privileged speeches despite the lateness of the hour. But we made sure, Mr. President, that we give way to their privileged speeches, Mr. President.
By tradition of the.
And the
Yes.
staff here in front knows what I'm talking about, Mr.
Yes.
President.
Yes, at least we know, and for the record, that we, of course, prioritize work because this is not just for us here in the Senate, this is for our countrymen. But it's also good that we are also able to find time for relaxation as well as for physical exercise. So thank you, Mr. President.
We thank the distinguished lady from Pangasinan and Iloilo, Senator Grace Poe, for pointing out the importance of work-life balance, Mr. President.
Thank you.
And let me take this one last, Mr. President, opportunity to thank our colleague, former Senator Ralph Recto. He's been the most generous, probably we would say, Mr. President, most generous senator supporting the Senate basketball team. Money. Who? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'd like to recognize Senator Bongo, who's raising his hand once again.
Just to add, Mr. President, we also want to recognize former Senator and Deputy Speaker Ralph Recto, who has always been supportive of the team, sending his staff. And of course, I forgot
Manager
Senator,
yata siya, no? I'd like to put on record, he's the team manager.
team manager.
Yeah, team manager.
Used to be the team manager. Sir, Senator Joel used to
I
be the
think
team
he's the team
manager, si
manager.
Senator Ralph Recto. And of course, Senator Chis Escudero, I forgot, I'm sorry, who always inspire us with this smile. Thank you po, Mr. President.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
President, may I move for a minute suspension to allow our basketball team, the Senate Pride, Mr. President,
Yes.
Senate basketball team to approach the podium, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. proceed with the additional reference of business. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection. Motion is approved. Yes, Senator Tolentino is recognized.
Mr. President, before we proceed with the additional reference of business, Mr. President, a while ago, Mr. President, a bill coming from the House of Representatives was referred to the Committee on Foreign Relations. Is something to do with the maritime zone bills coming from the House, as well as perhaps looking forward bills emanating from this chamber. Mr. President, may I seek a reconsideration of this? Either this be referred to the Committee on Justice, because immigration laws would be implicated, because border as well as delineation of Philippine territory would be highlighted in the said measure, and our rules would be very specific that under Rule 10, Section 13, the rules of the Senate would provide that the Committee on Justice and Human Rights shall have jurisdiction of all matters relating to the organization of justice as well as the implementation of human rights. Since this would implicate basic human rights of fisher folks, this representation believes that it should be lodged with the Committee on Justice. But just the same, Mr. President, I realize that there will be several maritime measures that would be filed. So, Mr. President, perhaps, again, at the option of the majority, a special committee on admiralty matters, Mr. President, can be created to hear and sponsor all measures related to the maritime zone bills as well as the baseline acts, among others, Mr. President. I just seek a reconsideration, and for the information of this body, perhaps the majority leaders, the chairman of the Committee on Rules, can perhaps recognize this important manifestation, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We submit to the wisdom of the body and the suggestions made by our distinguished colleague from the great province of Cavite. As much as I wanted to also put on record that our rule states that for foreign relations, all matters relating to the relations of the Philippines with other nations generally, diplomatic and consular services, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the United Nations Organization and its agencies, multilateral organizations, all international agreements, obligations, and contracts, and overseas Filipinos, especially, Mr. President, we talk about territorial jurisdiction. But I think the best way to address this issue, Mr. President, is the suggestion itself made by our distinguished colleague to come up with a special committee that concentrates, Mr. President, on territorial jurisdiction with regard to maritime issues, Mr. President. And so at the proper time, Mr. President, this representation as chairperson of the Committee on Rules will make the necessary motion. And we thank the gentleman from the province of Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, dear Majority Floor Leader, Senator Tolentino. Thank you very much. May I make a suggestion on Senate Resolution number 659? Fortunately, many of our colleagues are either in the lounge or not on the floor. I make an appeal to my distinguished colleague, Senator Viso Ontiveros, if we can take this up tomorrow, first hour, where we have more colleagues here to listen. Unless the good lady would like to sponsor it already now, I'm also ready to sponsor it now, but there's only a few members on the floor. What is the pleasure of our lady senator?
If the good Senate President would allow, sir, may I give my response in about just 1 minute? I'm just making
Yes,
a quick
suspend,
consultation.
suspend.
Salamat kaayo.
Mr. President, this juncture, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders. Committee report number 91 on Senate Bill number 2267. This bill pertains to Waste to Energy Act. So move, Mr. President.
Yes, so there be no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2267 under committee report number 91.
There be no objection, motion approved. We ask Secretary to read the title of the measure.
An act establishing a national energy policy and regulatory framework for facilities utilizing waste to energy technologies.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Isabela and Davao, Senator Rafi Tulfo, Chairperson of the Committee on Energy, to deliver his sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished colleague from Isabela and Davao, Mr. Energy himself, Senator Rafi Tulfo is recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, my esteemed colleagues. I'm honored to sponsor today Senate Bill number 2267 under Committee Report number 91, or the Waste to Energy Act. We always say there are only two sure things in this world. That is death and taxes. Kung mamarapati niyo po, dadagdagan ko ito. Isa sa mga siguradong hindi maiwasang hinaharap natin araw-araw ay ang basura. While we try to reduce, recycle, and reuse waste, there is no doubt that first and foremost, we produce them. Mahigit kumulang na kalahating kilo ang average na basura ng bawat Pilipino araw-araw. 15 kilos kada buwan at 180 kilos kada taon. With a population of over 100 million, the Philippines produce more than 21 million metric tons of trash each year. The Environmental Management Bureau has forecasted that 92 million metric tons of trash would be produced in the country between 2022 and 2005. Currently, sanitary landfill is the primary long-term method of solid waste disposal under RA 9003 or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000. But sanitary landfill requires vast parcels of land to accommodate our ever-growing waste production. Unfortunately, land is limited, and it is not the picture-perfect solution to our garbage problem. In fact, it is a major source of pollution. The most pressing environmental concern regarding landfill is the release of methane gas. As the organic mass in landfills decompose, methane gas is released. Methane absorbs the sun's heat approximately 80 times more than the carbon dioxide, making it one of the most potent greenhouse gases and a huge contributor to climate change. Also, the creation of landfill destroys natural habitats for wildlife. Hectares of land are taken from our wildlife just to accommodate our trash. Landfills also leak hazardous substances which contaminate nearby water sources. Mari po ito magdulot ng iba't ibang sakit sa atin. The pollutions from landfills pose a threat to the health of those who live and work nearby. A study in New York found that there is 12% increased risk of congenital malformations in children born to families living within a mile of hazardous landfill site because of the odor, smoke, noise, bugs, and water supply contamination. Given the inevitable garbage production coupled with the problems and dangers posed by landfills, we have to resort to an alternative. All things considered, waste to energy is a viable alternative to landfills, or better yet, it will supplement landfills as a way to manage our waste. Waste to energy plants convert non-recyclable solid waste materials into usable heat, electricity, or fuel through a variety of processes including combustion, gasification, pyrolyzation, and landfill gas recovery. These processes are what we call waste to energy, or as what I would like to call it, finding waste to energy. Properly executed, waste to energy plants could reduce 2,000 pounds of garbage to ash that weighs between 300 to 600 pounds and reducing the volume of waste by about 85%. Ang kalahating kilong basura na pinuproduce ng kada taon ay ma-reduce sa 65 grams na lamang. But of course, it is important to highlight that enhancing waste management requires a holistic approach encompassing essential aspects such as efficient waste segregation, recycling programs, public education, and regulatory enforcement. To achieve the best results, waste-to-energy initiatives should be implemented alongside other sustainable waste management practices. Hindi naman po natin kakalimutan at papalitan ang mga pulisiyang gumagana na. Holistic po at hindi one-track ang pag-iisip. The good thing about waste-to-energy is that it does not only solve our garbage disposal problem, it also mitigates our concerns on energy. The frequent occurrence of rotational brownouts has become a harsh reality for our citizens. This disruption not only affects our productivity, but also hampers the delivery of essential services such as healthcare, education, and public safety. A few months ago, we experienced a red alert, and the DOE foresees around 15 yellow alerts may be issued this year. These alerts signify that our energy reserves are dangerously low, leaving us vulnerable to potential blackouts and disruptions. And so, we look to waste to energy to increase our energy supply. Ang kasabihang, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Dito po, one man's trash is another man's kuryente. May kuryente po sa basura. In many progressive countries including Japan, Sweden, South Korea, and Singapore, the waste-to-energy technology and system has long been relied upon. Hindi po groundbreaking itong konsepto na ito. We are simply applying the best practices already adopted and proven effective by other countries. We will make sure that we will not compromise our environment in exchange for this valuable electricity. In Sweden, the energy supply to the district heating network from waste-to-energy plants provides enough heat in the winter to warm 1.25 million apartments and 680,000 houses each year. In the Philippines, there are currently 13 waste-to-energy plants. Only 6 are operational. There is a growing clamor among LGUs such as Ormoc City, Quezon City, Clark Special Economic Zone, Cebu City, Davao City, and Naga City for waste-to-energy plants. And while we have the DNR administrative order on the guidelines governing waste-to-energy facilities for the integrated management of municipal solid waste and the DOE Department Circular prescribing the policies and programs to promote and enhance the development of biomass waste-to-energy facilities, we must institutionalize the legal framework to waste-to-energy through a law. This will ensure predictability in the investment of the private sector and to provide support to the LGUs. This way, we ensure investors that waste-to-energy facilities will be supported, regulated, protected by the government. Now, let me lay down the salient points of the bill. Number one, the bill is technology neutral. This means it can accommodate not only the existing waste-to-energy technologies, but also future innovations in this field. This flexibility is crucial in a rapidly evolving technological landscape. The bill does not favor or exclude any specific waste-to-energy technology. The only requirement is that the waste-to-energy plants should not emit poisonous and toxic fumes into the environment. Two, it defines the roles of various government entities such as the National Solid Waste Management Commission, NSWMC, will ensure streamlined standards, criteria, and guidelines for facilities and identify and recommend potential clustering of LGUs for a common waste-to-energy facility. The DOE will issue permits to facilities and determine the standards, criteria, and requirements applicable to each kind of waste-to-energy facility. The DNR will ensure compliance with environmental requirements. The DOH will check compliance with health standards. And the LGUs will provide logistical and operational support for the processing of waste-to-energy feedstock and enter into a clustering arrangement for a common waste-to-energy facility. Three, the bill mandates the inclusion of waste to energy strategy in the Philippine Energy Plan and every national, provincial, and local waste management framework. The inclusion marks a significant shift towards a more sustainable and diversified energy portfolio. It recognizes the immense potential of waste as a renewable energy source and positions waste to energy as a fundamental pillar of our national energy strategy. Number 4, the bill authorizes LGUs to enter into clustering arrangements and public-private partnerships, PPPs, for establishing waste-to-energy facilities and provide standards to determining processing fees of waste-to-energy facilities. It acknowledges that waste management is a shared responsibility between the public and private sectors. By engaging private entities to PPPs, we can tap into their expertise, technological advancements, and financial resources, accelerating the deployment of waste-to-energy facilities. Number 5, it ensures the waste-to-energy facilities are not harmful to public health and the environment. It requires health impact assessment together with environment impact assessment prior to construction and operations of waste-to-energy facilities to ensure the safety of each facility. These comprehensive assessments ensure that potential health risks associated with the facility's operations, emissions, and waste management processes are thoroughly evaluated. They will be prohibited from emitting poisonous and toxic fumes into the environment, which are defined as any emissions and fumes which are beyond internationally accepted standards by the World Health Organization air quality guidelines and the Philippine Clean Air Act. This ensures that the air quality of communities surrounding the facilities are within safe and acceptable limits. It also mandates that the segregation, collection, transfer, storage, and transfer of waste to energy feedstocks and waste treatment processes of facilities are compliant with Ecological Solid Waste Management Act. Moreover, the bill explicitly prohibits the use of imported waste as a feedstocks for waste-to-energy facilities. This prohibition serves to safeguard our country from becoming a dumping ground for foreign waste. Finally, the bill provides specific penalties for failure to include and implement waste-to-energy strategy whenever feasible, for failure to perform the regulatory roles of the concerned government agencies, and for non-compliance with the standards and requirements under the law. Through strict enforcement of these penalties, we send a clear message that adherence to the law and its requirement is non-negotiable, fostering a culture of responsibility and accountability. Before closing, Mr. President, I would like to express my gratitude to my co-authors, Senators Sherwin Gatchalian, Francis Tolentino, and Bong Revilla, as well as Senate President Mig Zubiri, and to all our stakeholders, particularly the DOE, NSWMC, DNR, DOH, DILG, NEDA, PPP Center, for their invaluable contribution in crafting this bill. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, there is a way to address both our energy and garbage problems. Let us weigh the advantage of opening our doors to this technology that creates energy out of our waste. Hindi po ito basta-basta gagamitin ng ibang bansa without considering its risk and problems. It is high time we adjust our policies to welcome this technology and move forward towards a greener approach in waste management and energy generation. Thank you, Mr. President, and my dear colleagues.
Thank you very much, my distinguished colleague.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there are several colleagues of ours who wanted to co-sponsor the measure. I think the Senate President himself would like to insert into the records his co-sponsorship.
I'll just insert to the records my co-sponsorship speech. I'd just like to put on record that the time has come that we proceed towards waste to energy technology.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, I move that we recognize the former chairperson of the Committee on Energy, now the chairperson of the Committee on Ways and Means, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. I move that he be
Former
recognized.
Mr. Energy, now not as energized, but Mr. Education na po. No other than Senator Wing Gatchalian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pleasant afternoon, dear colleagues. Ganang hapon po sa lahat. Today, I stand before you with great enthusiasm as a co-sponsor of Senate Bill number 2267, otherwise known as the Waste to Energy Act, a landmark piece of legislation that holds the potential to completely transform our nation's energy resources for the better. In the 18th Congress, this representation had the privilege of sponsoring this groundbreaking proposal while serving as the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Energy. We meticulously developed this proposed measure from scratch due to the alarming garbage crisis currently plaguing the Philippines, which poses an imminent threat of irreversible harm to both our ecosystems and the lives of our fellow citizens. Central to our approach was the emphasis on the 5 R's of waste hierarchy. Refuse to generate waste, reduce the amount of waste produced, reuse materials, recycle waste materials, and recover other uses for residual garbage. In relation to the 5th R, recover, through my travels and in-depth research, I have seen firsthand how waste-to-energy facilities have played a crucial role in numerous countries. Among the plethora of technologies available, one stands out with immense untapped potential: the utilization of waste as a feedstock for energy generation through waste-to-energy facilities. As of 2020, over 53 countries have embraced waste-to-energy technology. Overall, these plants are currently in operation, producing close to 400 million metric tons of waste per year, generating over 15.5 million megawatt hours of electricity. That is enough electricity to power almost 1 million homes worldwide, based on average global per capita electricity consumption figures. For instance, one cannot overlook the remarkable achievements of our ASEAN neighbor, Singapore. This world-class city-state has exemplified the transformative potential of waste-to-energy technology through the operation of its 4 WTE plants. In 2018 alone, these plants successfully processed an impressive 8,044 tons of waste per day. As a result, Singapore managed to reduce landfill waste volume by a staggering 80%, while simultaneously generating enough electricity to power over 20,000 homes. Mr. President, the remarkable achievements set by Singapore serve as an inspiring model for the Philippines to follow. This example demonstrates that such facilities can operate efficiently and cleanly, even in urban areas, without compromising the ecology or the health of the host communities. Putting things into perspective, according to the Department of Energy, our country currently has 6 operational plants with an aggregate capacity of 10.41 megawatts, while another 17 are ongoing projects with a corresponding aggregate capacity of 49.78 megawatts. These figures clearly show that we have yet to fully capitalize on the enormous potential that waste-to-energy offers for our country. By passing the Waste-to-Energy Act, we can address multiple challenges simultaneously. We can significantly curb environmental concerns associated with waste disposal, while also generating clean and renewable energy to meet our growing power demands. Foremost, the bill recognizes the importance of safeguarding against potential environmental and health concerns associated with waste-to-energy operations. To achieve this, the legislation outlines the specific powers and responsibilities of key government agencies within a comprehensive whole-of-government waste-to-energy framework. These agencies include the National Solid Management Commission, the Department of Energy, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and the Department of Health, among others. By clearly defining the roles and responsibilities of these agencies, the bill establishes a robust regulatory framework. This framework ensures that waste-to-energy operations are carried out with the highest standards of environmental protection and public health in mind. Through effective oversight and coordination among relevant government bodies, we can mitigate potential risk and ensure that waste-to-energy facilities operate in a manner that is both environmentally sustainable and socially responsible. Furthermore, this bill strives to achieve enhanced investor interest and instill confidence in the development of WTE facilities within the Philippines. Specifically, this bill will empower local government units to enter into clustering agreements with nearby LGUs, long-term contracts, and even public-private partnerships for the construction and operation of common WTE facilities. Allowing these arrangements will produce economies of scale for interested developers, but will also lead to lowering processing fees for the LGUs. Mr. President, it is also crucial to remember that the intent of the Waste to Energy Act is to empower LGUs, providing them with the option to adopt WTE technology if it is deemed feasible and suitable for their specific circumstances. This bill respects the autonomy of LGUs and does not impose a mandate for them to establish WTE plants against their will. In conclusion, I express my heartfelt gratitude to the sponsor of this bill, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Energy, Senator Raffy Tulfo, who has played a pivotal role in championing this important measure. I would also like to extend my appreciation to the esteemed authors of this legislation, Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., and Senator Francis Tolentino, whose valuable insights and contributions have been instrumental in shaping this bill. The urgency to act cannot be overstated. We have a responsibility to safeguard our environment and secure a sustainable future for our nation. The Waste to Energy Act serves as a vital tool to mitigate the damage caused by the garbage crisis and pave the way for a cleaner, healthier, and more resilient Philippines. Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues.
Thank you very much. I believe Senator Francis Tolentino would like to be recognized.
Mr. President, we have a list here, Mr. President.
Oh, therefore, we have to defer to the list.
Yes,
Sorry.
Mr. President. Next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Cavite, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. I move that he be recognized, Mr.
The
President.
two gentlemen from Cavite are pointing at each other, but we don't recognize Senator Bong
Mr. President.
Revilla Jr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to co-sponsor this timely piece of legislation. Kadalasan po natin naririnig na may kayamanan sa basura. One man's trash is another man's treasure, ika nga. Lalo ngayong panahon ng tagulan, alam natin ang epekto ng ragasa ng basurang inaanod sa mga lansangan at mga daluyang tubig. Nakakapaglumong malaman na isa tayo sa mga bansang may pinakamaraming basura na dumurungis sa ating kapaligiran at nagdudulot ng kapahamakan sa taong bayan. We are among the top contributors of plastic waste worldwide. Isang malungkot na katotohanan, lalo't alam natin na kadalasan ang pinakaapektado ng masamang dulot nito ay ang mga mahihirap nating mga kababayan. In support of the sentiments of our dear Senate President in his opening speech yesterday, we have to act swiftly before the consequences become too unbearable. Bago pa man tayo tuluyang malunod sa basura, humanap na tayo ng paraan upang mapakinabangan ito imbis na mapinsala pa tayo. And that is exactly the reason and urgency behind this representation's filing of Senate Bill number 989, which seeks to establish a national energy policy and regulatory framework for facilities utilizing waste-to-energy technologies. Let us transform danger and disadvantage into opportunity and benefit. Let us turn trash into treasure. Unahan na natin bago pa man tayo sakluban ng basura. Salagin na natin ang sakuna bago pa ito bumalot sa atin. And I urge all of us, together, let us endeavor for immediate passage of this measure whose benefits need no further defense. Gawin na natin ito gawa na natin ito na hindi na lang para sa atin, kundi para sa susunod na henerasyon na magmamana ng kung anumang iiwan natin. Let us leave them with world protected from the threats of the environmental damage and degradation through our collective efforts and shared advocacies. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is the gentleman from the great province of Cavite, Senator Francis Tolentino. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Francis Tolentino is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, akala ko po nananaginip ako na makakaakyat sa plenaryo itong bill na in-sponsor ni Senator Tulfo, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Revilla, and this representation. And I was MMDA chairman, Mr. President. Ang problema talaga nun ay basura. Nagdudulot ng baha. At ang baha ay magdudulot ng traffic. Alam po yan ni Senator Gatchalian at kasama ko po siya sa MMDA, Mr. President. I believe, Mr. President, this measure is a precious gift to our people, hitting two birds in one stone. In one stone, it is well thought of that addresses two of our country's problems, disposal of waste and the creation and production of clean energy. My estimate before, Mr. President, when I was MMDA chairman is that every resident of Metro Manila used to produce almost more than half a kilo of garbage every day. Sa palagay ko po ngayon, mas marami na with our online purchases. Mr. President, for the last several years, ang ginagawa lang po namin is to have study tours. I brought with me the Metro Manila mayors to Sweden to study the top-of-the-line waste-to-energy plant in a town near Stockholm. We went to a place, I think in Korea, to likewise witness the operation of a waste-to-energy plant. Puro tour na lang kami, Mr. President. Ang dami na pong briefing na napuntahan namin. I brought with me the Metro Manila vice mayors. When we ended the tour, we ended up in a salad garden restaurant right in front of a modern waste-to-energy plant. But with this bill, Mr. President, this will now be a reality thanks to the sponsors led by Senator Tulfo. The bill will reduce both methane and carbon dioxide emissions coming from the landfill and at the same time generate energy through the employment of best available technology. I used to visit a plant in Pasig. Yung po mga basura, ginagawa nilang maliliit na pellets para mapahalo sa asfalto para gamitin ng DPWH. Ngayon po, balita ko, sarado na rin yon. Pero ngayon, dahil dito, palagay ko, mas marami pa mga planta magagawa para ma-recycle at magamit yung mga ibang basura na nanggagaling sa household at nanggagaling sa ibang mga industrial and commercial establishments. Improper waste, Mr. President, improper waste disposal has largely contributed to our country's environmental problem, which I believe is the root cause of the clogging of our existing waterways that caused massive flooding in Metro Manila. Maging yung baha po noong nakaraang linggo. Sa basura po yan. In fact, a study was made by the JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, which stated that the percentage of local government units that fully followed the sanitary landfill method as mandated by Republic Act 9003 did not reach 10%. Nakakalungkot po yun, Mr. President. Ang dami ko pong kilalang mga local government officials dahil wala silang resources, wala silang kakayahan, nagkakaso pa sa ombudsman. Hindi na nakatakbo, nakulong pa ho yung iba dahil ang hirap po mag-comply sa mga requirements ng Republic Act 9003. We cannot blame them, Mr. President. Wala po silang kakayahan. Subalit, with this act, this will now be a national law with safeguards as explained by Senator Gatchalian, which would help likewise the LGUs. I think we will generate robust cooperation from our mayors, from our governors and other local government officials. Mr. President, concurrent with the garbage disposal problem is the looming energy crisis. We witnessed this in Mindoro Occidental recently and in the Panay Island. This is already manifested in the rotational brownouts being implemented by electric suppliers in some parts of the country. Further, the rising cost of power due mainly to the shortage of supply is further aggravated by the rising price of petroleum. Mr. President, properly implemented, this bill will now hit three birds with one stone. Nabanggit ko po kanina yung clean energy, nabanggit ko yung basura. Probably, Mr. President, this would also address partially, inflation. Kasi po yung pera po matitipid ng ating mga kababayan, magagamit na po sa pambili ng kanilang basic needs and necessities. Mr. President, the use of technology will eliminate our waste, which would eliminate our waste has long been overdue. Bago po natin ma-implement ito, Mr. President, nakikinikinita ko na. Artificial intelligence would likewise play a big role. Nakikinikinita ko na ang ating kinabukasan, kung meron po tayong ganitong uri ng teknolohiya at batas, ay makakatulong para sa lahat, hindi lang sa pangkasalukuyang henerasyon, kung hindi sa mga darating pang saling lahi. We owe it to the future generation to pass this important legislation because it is our responsibility to protect the environment and preserve it for them. I congratulate the sponsors for making this bill see the light of the day. Ang tagal-tagal na po namin inihintay ito sa Metro Manila. Yung mga kasama kong mga mayors ay nagpalipat-lipat na ho ng pwesto, subalit ito pa rin po ang kanilang inaasahan. Thus, I earnestly seek for the early passage of this measure. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat, Senator Tolentino, Majority Leader.
Yes. Mr. President, Senator Bato de la Rosa would also like to co-sponsor the measure, and he requested that his sponsorship speech be inserted into the records.
Thank you very much for that, Senator.
Mr. President, our Senate President pro tempore would also like to make a manifestation. I move that she be recognized, Mr. President.
I would not, I would be surprised if she didn't, because she's one of our resident environmentalists and energy champion, clean energy champion. Senator Legarda is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I acknowledge that many of our colleagues have sponsored the measure, including the leadership, the Senate President, as one of the authors of the measure. I also acknowledge the fact that since the time that we authored the Clean Air Act in 1999 and the Ecological Solid Waste Management of 2001, it's been almost more than 2 decades, and therefore I am open to revisiting the measures. Let it just be noted that this representation will interpolate on the measure because we are amending 2 landmark pieces of legislation, the Clean Air Act and the Ecological Solid Waste Management Law. I am for development in a sustainable way. I am, of course, for a clean, healthy, resilient, sustainable environment, but we must also ensure that the air that we breathe will not be filled with particles that are unseen, that will enter the body or the system or the lungs of young children, elders, and women, Mr. President. So I approached the author, Senator Tulfo, and informed him that I will interpolate on this. Let me just also put of note the sponsorship of Senator Tolentino, one of the authors. He mentioned RA 9003, the Ecological Solid Waste Management Law, January of 2001. I remember because that was my first law as a neophyte senator at 38 years old. Mr. President, the law is not unsuccessful. It is, tatagalogin ko po, ugali ng mga tao na hindi sumusunod sa batas. Bumisita po kayo sa aking tanggapan at makita po nyo 4 higit pa sa 4, 5 ang garbage bins. Seryoso ko pong hinihiwalay ang basura sa nabubulok at hindi nabubulok. Sa aking bahay po, ganun din po. Sa aking maliit na farm, ganun din po. Napaka-stricto. Sa aking 89-year-old na nanay na minsan po ay matigas ang ulo, sa aking 90-year-old na ama na minsan din po ay matigas ang ulo, hanggang po sa mga kasambahay na bago po magpunta sa akin ay walang kaalaman sa batas na ito. Lahat po sila ngayon, pati ang mga staff ko ay disiplinado. We segregate our waste at source, recycle, and compost. Ibig sabihin po, ang mga natirang pagkain, ilagay po sa trash bin para po sa pagkain, ibabaon sa lupa para po maging organic fertilizer. Ako po ay nagtatanim ng gulay na aking kinakain. I grow my own food. Ito po ang nagbuhay sa aming pamilya at 2 dosenang pamilya sa 3 taon ng pandemya hanggang ngayon, pangregalo, pangkain, lahat po. At yung fertilizer na yan ay galing sa aming food waste. Pangalawa po, ang bote, lata o plastic ay hinding-hindi sinasama sa food waste. At syempre po, ito'y linalagay sa material recovery facility na kinokolekta po para po maresikulo dahil may pera sa basura. Gaya po ng ehemplo ng Barangay Holy Spirit sa Quezon City. Alam ni Mayor Joy Belmonte yan kung saan very proactive ang kapitan at mga kababaihan ng Holy Spirit na bago pa man maging batas ang RA 9003 ay 1997 ginagawa na po nila ang paghihiwalay ng basura kaya may pera sila sa binebentang bote, lata at plastic. At pangatlo po, syempre, yung hindi na kayang maresikulo at hindi kayang ibaon sa lupa ay tinatawag natin residual o latak. At kung tayo ay susunod sa batas na yan at 25% sa Pilipinas ay sumusunod sa batas na yan, ay ang diversion ay mas malaki hanggang 80% ng ating basura ay pwede ma-divert. Ibig sabihin po, 20% lang ang kokolektahin ng garbage collector. Yun lang po ang pupunta sa environmentally engineered sanitary landfill. Therefore, the issue of saan ilalagay, hindi po issue yan dahil konti lang ang pupunta po sa landfill. Having said that, if there is one barangay out of the more than 42,000 barangays of the country that can implement RA 9003, Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2001, efficiently and effectively, why can't the others do it? So, what I am saying is, kayang gawin. Hindi ko po pinagbabawal o hindi ko po kinokontra as is where is right now, WTE, because I still have to study it. I mentioned RA 9003 because it will be amended along with the Clean Air Act. And so I will reserve my judgment on the proposed measure of waste to energy facility. I know during a LEDAC, this was raised and this is one of the important or priority pieces of legislation that was mentioned in the LEDAC. I will cooperate, I will study, I will interpolate, I will learn, I will support, we will see. So, having said that, thank you very much to our authors. We welcome that you filed it so that it can be studied, it can be discussed. It may be a problem it may be a solution to the problem of solid waste in our country, but let us ensure that it will not create more problems than the problems that it is trying to solve. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. But on that note, I'll speak after Senator Risa. I just give a quick manifestation after Senator Risa.
Yes, Mr. President, may I move that we recognize our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, President.
Yes, please go ahead.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. I would just like respectfully to associate myself with the manifestation of the Senate President pro tempore, Senator Lauren. As the former chair of the Senate Committee on Energy, Senator Sherwin, might remember, I also interpellated this bill about 3 years ago when he was our chair and sponsoring this bill. Even then, I began to raise what I feel are important issues and what probably remain important issues regarding the health effects of waste to energy technology and also possible alternatives both to our solid waste management, yung pagpapatupad ng Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, at syempre yung ating mga iba't ibang issue tungkol sa enerhiya. So just as I also manifested personally to my seatmate here, our current chair of the Senate Committee on Energy, Senator Rafi, I will reserve also to interpellate and possibly propose amendments at the proper time, Mr. President. Salamat kaayo.
Thank you very much. And if I may, Majority Leader, yeah, I just want to share with you, because initially I was also principal author in the House of Representatives of the Clean Air Act. But in my travels through the years, in 2004, I was able to go to France to visit waste to energy plants there. I was able to travel also to Germany. I went to Bonn, where the United Nations is the headquarters for the United Nations Environmental Organization. It's located. And in the middle of Bonn, there is a waste to energy plant. And I'd just like to share with everybody the newest waste to energy plant found in Copenhagen. I asked my staff to show the picture to everyone. Look at that. That is in the middle of the city of Copenhagen. And that's in the Danish capital. Copenhagen pledges to become the world's first carbon neutral city by 2025, and with the much anticipated Copenhill having opened up, the city is hurling towards its goal. It's designed by, I don't know how to pronounce this, Bajark Ingels Group, BIG. It's a waste to energy plant, but it is very intriguing because it's also a park. It also is a theme park because they put ski slopes, hiking and running trails, and a section of green, lush greenery right in the middle of bustling Copenhagen. Look at that. That is Copenhagen, gentlemen and ladies. They are the strictest when it comes to pollution. They are the strictest when it comes to emission. And yet, below that beautiful scenery, modern building and facade, there is let me quote, furnaces, steam and turbines that convert 440,000 tons of waste annually into enough clean energy to deliver electricity and district heating for 150,000 homes. This you can Google this. This is on the net. This can power 150,000 homes. So, as the Senate President Pro Tem had said, we'll study this. I'm always open to new technology when it comes to different industries, particularly the energy industry. And hopefully, let's give this a chance. I think being the number one polluter, let me just repeat what who had said this. Senator Tulfo, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Bong Revilla earlier mentioned, and Senator Tolentino. We are the number one polluter in the world now of our oceans in plastic. We're the number one polluter. And if you look at the pie, the graph, and I don't have it with me now, we contribute to about almost 60% of the world's plastics in the ocean. As a matter of fact, itong waste to energy plant, kumuha lang tayo ng harvester na barko, i-harvest lang natin yung mga isla ng plastic dyan sa Manila Bay and all over the Philippine archipelago. We'll have enough plastics to light up this plant for the next year or two. Ganun kadaming pollution ang ilalabas natin. And I do agree with Senator Lauren Legarda. Unfortunately, matitigas ulo talaga ang ating mga kababayan. Tinatamad sila na gawin yung dapat gawin sa solid waste management. But my question is, how come they do it in Copenhagen? Baka hindi din sila nag-segregate sa Copenhagen. Baka tamad din yung mga tao nila dun mag-segregate sa Copenhagen, which is a first world super clean, super environmentally friendly country. So we should open our minds and our hearts to this possible technology, as maybe this will solve the problem of the Philippines being the number one polluter in our oceans throughout the world. So thank you very much, my dear Majority Floor Leader. The rest of my speech I will just insert for the record. I just wanted to point this out because I'm fascinated, and there's several like this all over the world.
Thank you, Mr. President, and we look forward to a meaningful discussion on this particular measure. At this juncture, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2267 under Committee Report number 91. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection. Motion is approved.
Mr. President, this juncture, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1806. This is the bill pertaining to the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights and Obligations Act. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection. Motion is approved. We'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator Win Gatchalian, and to propose amendments, our distinguished Minority Floor Leader, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel.
Yes, Mr. President. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are in a period of individual amendments.
Yes.
And with that, I move that we resume the period of individual amendments using the amended copy, Mr. President, of the bill dated May 8, 2023 as our working draft. So move, Mr. President.
Thank you. No objections. Please proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me start off with my with this representation's proposed amendments. So on section 3, on definition of terms, on page 2, line 12, paragraph E, between the words exactions and impose, insert the phrase for revenue sharing purposes. Revenue raising purposes. Sorry, sorry for that mistake. Still on paragraph E, lines 14 to 15, after the word loss, delete comma, and the preceding phrase rules and regulations, including those collected by other tax collecting agencies. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the amendment. Amendments approved.
On page 2, lines 21 to 22, paragraph G, replace the phrase BIR, BOC, LGUs, or other tax collecting agencies, as the case may be, with the phrase respective revenue authorities.
There be
So
no
moved.
objection. There be no objection to the motion or the amendment. Amendments approved.
On page 4, on Taxpayers' Bill of Rights and Obligations, on section 4, on Taxpayers' Bill of Rights and Obligations, on page 2, lines 31 to 32 until page 3, line 1, after the words judicial level, delete the preceding sentences, provided that nothing in this act shall amend the jurisdiction of the courts and quasi-judicial agencies as provided by law, nor deprive the judiciary of its power to promulgate rules and procedures in all courts. Thereafter, on line 2, delete the word further and the comma preceding it. Still on page 3, line 3, replace the word finally with the word further. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the amendment. Amendment. Yes, we'd like to recognize the distinguished minority.
Can we ask the sponsor or the movant of the amendment to read
The entire paragraph?
How the paragraph will now read like, Mr. President?
On section 4, Taxpayers' Bill of Rights and Obligations. Without prejudice to the rights and remedies of the taxpayer provided for in the National Internal Revenue Code, NIRC of 1997, as amended, Customs Modernization and Tariffs Act, CMTA, Republic Act number 1125, creating the Court of Tax Appeals, CTA, as amended, Book 2 of the Local Government Code of 1991 as amended, and other laws, rules and regulations, issuances, and circulars in support thereof. The taxpayer is hereunto granted basic taxpayers' rights, whether at administrative level or at the judicial level, provided that nothing in this act shall amend, modify, or repeal the provisions of the above-mentioned laws, provided further that the taxpayer is expected to observe and comply with tax obligations enumerated in this act and in other relevant laws, rules, and regulations that are implemented by revenue authorities.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's clear. No objection.
Thank you. Thank
There
you,
being
Mr.
no
President.
objection, the amendment's approved.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Okay.
So page 3, we're now on page 3, Mr. President. On on page 3, line 20, which is about section 5. Delete the words. No, there. Delete the word or between computation and documentation and replace it with and. And then delete the phrase or the words or both after the word documentation, as well as the commas preceding and succeeding it. Therefore, the paragraph shall read, in case of any deficiency tax findings, alleged violations, or any decisions or rulings rendered by the revenue authorities, the taxpayer shall be informed in the written decision or ruling clearly and sufficiently of the facts and laws thereon, including any supporting computation and documentation upon which they are based. I so move, Mr. President.
Accept, Mr. President.
It's accepted by the sponsor. There be no objection. Amendment's approved.
On page 3, line 22, this is still section 5, paragraph A. Delete the word impending, Mr. President, which is found between the words any and institution. So the sentence will now read, the taxpayer shall have the right to be informed of any institution by revenue authorities of a summary collection action which requires sale or seizure of property or the freezing of assets. So move, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
Amendment's accepted. No objection.
Page 4.
Page 4.
Page 4 is line 2. Between the words in interest and. So after the word interest, insert the additional enumeration of the words. Insert the words surcharges, fines, surcharges, comma, fines, Mr. President. And then the word interest should be converted to its plural form, interests. So therefore, the paragraph C, bakit yan na to? Transfer. Line 20. So therefore, the paragraph will now read, right to pay no more than the correct amount of tax. The taxpayer shall have the right to pay only the amount of tax legally due, comma, including interests, comma, surcharges, comma, fines, and penalties. I so move, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Accept, Mr. President.
Okay, now
That's accepted.
yeah. And now that we have fixed the wording of the paragraph, Mr. President, the next motion is to transfer this section 5 paragraph C to make it section 5 paragraph K, Mr. President.
Okay.
So it's just a transfer. And then so that means ano ba, we place it right after paragraph J. Diba? It becomes paragraph K. So
Then relettered.
then
Is that acceptable to the sponsor?
Yes, accepted, Mr. President.
So please take note, Secretariat. Okay, There being no objection and accepted by the sponsor.
Thank you.
It's approved.
Okay. Right. Mr. President, on section 6, on taxpayers' basic. Meron pa.
What page?
Mr. President.
There are no amendments.
Just to be very clear, Mr. President, yung ating kasi I'm asking for the reason why we are moving that because we want it to be close to paragraph L actually. So
Yeah.
if I misstated, sabi ko, put it right after paragraph K. So let's put it right before paragraph L para hindi.
Yeah,
So
I think the better term is before paragraph
yes,
L.
before paragraph L. Just
And
just to be
re-letter.
very- because that's the reason, Mr. President. We want the paragraphs K and L to be read together, Mr. President.
President.
Yes,
Mr. President. I
we
accept, Mr.
understand.
President.
Yeah, with that clarification, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
That's the intention, Mr. President.
No more amendments in page 5? Let's move to page 6.
Intention.
Page 5.
Made also on the floor, Mr. President.
Yes.
Page 6.
Section 5, page 4.
Sino?
Page 5.
Sponsor, is there any proposed
page
amendment page 6? Also, we go back to page 4?
Yes, Mr. President, because we just went to page 5 because we transferred
Of the letter.
the paragraph. Okay, on
Yeah.
page 4, line 9. Line 9. Okay.
Page 4, line 9.
Which is the second paragraph of section 5D. We propose the deletion of the phrase. Bakit yun? Yes. Before the revenue authorities. Because na-double lang, Mr. President, double entry. So it will now read like this. The taxpayer shall have the right to be heard and that the evidence presented by the taxpayer be duly considered by the revenue authorities in deciding any matter involving the taxpayer. So move, Mr. President.
Accept, Mr. President.
There be no objection and accepted by the sponsor, amendments accepted. Approved, rather.
On page 4, line 12, which is about paragraph E, delete the word delete the word A between the words to and fair, which is line 13, Mr. President, just to be just correct. So the taxpayer shall at all times be entitled to fair and impartial dispositions, etc., Mr. President. So,
Sure, sponsor?
I accept, Mr. President.
Amendments accepted by the sponsor, approved.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. President, I forgot even in the title, so that's why line 12 also, right to a fair and impartial proceedings, we also removed the word A, Mr. President.
Yes, to be consistent with your line, the paragraph.
Yes, lines 12 and 13.
May we hear
Accept-
from the sponsor?
accept, Mr. President.
Accepted and duly noted, corrected.
Page 5, Mr. President, unless the sponsor has.
No, Mr. President, I'm good with this page.
Page 5, line 29 of our working draft. I move that we delete the words unjust or, which is found between the words any and excessive, line 29.
Line 20.
29. Delete the phrase unjust or. So, yes, it will now read any excessive assessment, not any unjust or excessive adjustment.
The line will read, tax liabilities in case of any excessive assessment. Yeah.
Accept, Mr. President.
The amendments accepted, and no objections, it's adopted.
Pati ito? Ito rin. Ito? Okay, same line, Mr. President. I'm sorry, I was not able to make this in one go, Mr. President. After the word assessment, I move to delete the comma as well as the words unjustifiable error, Mr. President. And then on line 30, before the word delay, insert the word undue. So now, Mr. President, I will now read this paragraph L as amended. Right to relief from paying taxes, right to relief from paying interest, surcharges, and penalties. The taxpayers shall be entitled to a reduction of interest, surcharges, and penalties levied on their tax liabilities in case of any excessive assessment or undue delay caused by the revenue authorities, including instances of loss of records, personal transfers, extended illness or leaves of absence, and personal training, resignation, retirement, or termination from service of the concerned personnel. That would be the final wording of this subparagraph L, Mr. President. I so move, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
There's no objection and accepted by the sponsor. Therefore, amendments accepted.
Thank
My
you.
next amendment is on page 7, Mr. President. So if the sponsor has.
Yes, Mr. President, I have an amendment on page 7.
Page 7, there are no amendments on page 6?
On section,
Are there any amendments on page 6, Your Honor?
yes, Mr. President.
So,
So on section,
page 6.
yes, on section 6, on taxpayers' basic obligations, on page 6, line 27, paragraph A, after the word regulations, insert a new phrase that reads, with reasonable care and diligence. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the amendment. Amendment is approved.
So on page 7, lines 7 to 9, delete the entire paragraph D. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the amendment, amendment's approved.
Okay, page 7, Mr. President, line 27.
No amendments before 927?
Mr. President, before that, let me just move to read letter accordingly, Mr. President.
Yes, there is a motion and duly noted by the secretary. There's no objection.
No more in page,
Nothing before line 27 of page 7.
no more, Mr.
Yes,
President.
the next amendment, Mr.
Yes,
President.
please proceed, Minority Leader.
Page 7, line 27. And the purpose of the amendment, this is substantial, Mr. President. We will make the DOJ the agency which will have, where the ONTA will be attached for policy and program coordination. So the amendment is to replace the words line 27, finance, open parenthesis, capital letters, DOF, close parenthesis, with justice, open parenthesis, capital letters, DOJ, close parenthesis. I so move, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the amendment. Amendment's accepted.
Mr. President, with the indulgence of the body, let me just read my explanatory note on that acceptance, Mr. President. Initially, the Office of the National Taxpayer Advocate was proposed to be attached to the Department of Finance, mainly because the nature of the functions and responsibilities of the ONTA is within the mandate of the DOF, being the government steward of sound financial policy. Further, DOF has expertise on taxation that is complementary to the mandate of ONTA. In the Philippines, all tax-related policies, issues, and administrative cases are under the guidance and management of the DOF. Moreover, since tax policies and reforms are usually initiated, evaluated, and implemented by the DOF and its attached agencies, the DOF is in a better position to assist taxpayers and ascertain tax compliance. However, upon further discussion and consultation with the good Senate Minority Leader, he suggested that taxpayers would better be served by having ONTA attached to the Department of Justice as originally presented because of ONTA's independence from the DOF. After careful scrutiny and reflection, indeed, the good Senate Minority Leader has raised an important point. Based on our further study of and in spite of the reasons that have been given, the following observations should also be taken into consideration. First, it is important to note that DOF exercises supervision and control over revenue authorities. Hence, considering that administrative relationship between the DOF and the Commission of Internal Revenue Commissioner of Internal Revenue, the CIR for short, there is an apparent conflict of interest if the proposed ONTA is lodged under the DOF. For instance, ONTA may question the validity or constitutionality of the revenue regulations issued by the BIR. Note that these RRs, revenue regulations, are reviewed and approved by the Secretary of Finance. To give you another example, suppose that ONTA will assist a qualified taxpayer to contest the BIR rulings issued by the Commissioner of Internal Revenue pursuant to its power to interpret the tax code. These BIR rulings are appealable to the SOF, who has the power to review, amend, and modify decisions of the CIR, the Commissioner of Internal Revenue. Moreover, we have identified more than 20 provisions in the tax code wherein the Secretary of Finance can promulgate rules and regulations subject to the recommendation of the Commissioner of Internal Revenue. These rules can be contested or questioned by the ONTA. Secondarily, there might be negative public perception on the ONTA if it's attached to the DOF. From 2019 to 2022, BIR has consistently part of the top 10 most complained government agencies of the Anti-Red Tape Authority and BOC from 2019 to 2021. With the attachment of the ONTA to the DOF, it may be hard to convince the public of ONTA's independence from its mother agency, considering its main mandate to pursue and protect the interests of the taxpayers in relation to the abuse and undue discretion of the BIR and BOC, which, as emphasized earlier, are also under the supervision and control of DOF. As mentioned above, since ONTA will be under the DOJ, it will create an impression of independence from the DOF and will assuage the fears and doubts of the public that the ONTA will favor the DOF, BIR, and BOC. Thus, the transfer of the ONTA to the DOF will boost the DOJ too. Sorry, Mr. President. Thus, the transfer of the ONTA to the DOJ will boost taxpayers' confidence. For the foregoing consideration, this representation is of the belief that there will be increased taxpayer confidence if the ONTA is attached to an agency outside of the DOF. Thank you, Mr. President, for that explanatory note.
And I totally agree with the proposal of the Senate Minority Leader. It is inherent in the bloodlines of the DOF to extract money from a person. So they'll always give the taxpayer a hard time. It's like trying to get refunds from the BIR when you have a tax VAT refundable transaction. It is inherent to them not to release any funds or to collect funds. So I totally agree with the minority.
Mr. President, let me also put on record that this representation totally agree with this amendments introduced by our minority leader. And I was talking to him about it earlier, Mr. President, to make sure that there's really a check and balance of what the DOF and the BIR is doing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And it's good. It was a healthy discussion between this representation and the minority leader. And he pointed it accurately that the conflict of interest because of the final approval of the DOF in all BIR regulation might lead to conflict of interest, Mr. President.
Which is proof, Mr. President, that during the break, we worked hard on this. So we were not able to go to Copenhagen and see the
I haven't been.
I haven't seen waste to energy plant, Mr. President.
Let's schedule a trip there.
We worked on this.
So the amendments accepted. There's
Yes,
no
Mr.
objection.
President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
So, Mr. President, to go on with the amendment
Page.
on Section 8 on powers, functions, and responsibilities.
So no more amendments on page 7? We can move forward.
No more, Mr. President.
Therefore, let's proceed to page 8.
On Section 8, on powers, function, and responsibilities of the Office of the National Taxpayer Advocate. On page 8, line 8, paragraph A, delete the word tax between the words there and queries, and after the word taxes, insert the phrase by providing legal and procedural advice, including guidance on remedial measures that can be availed of, which may be in writing upon request of the taxpayer. So move, Mr. President.
No objection from the body. The amendment is,
Mr. President,
yes, Senate Minority Floor Leader.
page 8, this is now concerning section 8, paragraph B. Lines 12 to 13, I propose the deletion of the words "and disqualifications," meaning to say that the ONTA shall have the power to set qualifications of taxpayers who shall be given priority in the ONTA's representation services, etc.
Yeah.
I so move, Mr. President.
What does the author say? Sponsor?
Accept, Mr. President.
There being no objection and it's duly accepted, motion the amendments approved.
And then on the same, that same subparagraph, line 14, there is a mention of section 5G. If we can just amend it correspondingly to match the new
Yes.
letter for that original 5G, because we renumbered or relettered earlier,
Relettered
Mr.
it,
President.
yes. Yes,
So now I think the working paragraph letter is F. Okay, so
Yes.
so I so
to be
that
clear,
5G
Just to be clear.
it will be 5F.
5F, Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you.
There being no objection, the amendments approved.
Page 9.
Yes, Mr. President.
We're now, no other amendments to
Section
page 8, we proceed to page 9.
Page 9 on the section 9, qualifications of the National Taxpayer Advocate and Deputy National Taxpayer Advocates. This amendment, Mr. President, is also quite substantive, and we're opening up the positions to other professions or occupations, Mr. President.
Correct, Mr. President.
So, well, okay naman, so I think my compañeros and compañeras in the Philippine Bar will understand, and then the CPAs will be glad with this amendment, Mr. President. On page 9, line 14, after the phrase National Taxpayer Advocate, insert the phrase who is a member of the Philippine Bar in good standing, and enclose it with commas, Mr. President. That's the first amendment. But to get for our colleagues to get the complete pictures, on page 9, line 14, after the words Deputy National Taxpayer, I also propose to insert the phrase who is a member of the Philippine Bar in good standing or a certified public accountant.
Or a certified public accountant.
Or a certified public accountant, and then also enclose, also put the proper commas, Mr. President.
Yes.
So,
Subject to style.
in effect, the amendment is that we are now allowing the Deputy National Taxpayer Advocates to be CPA. From the original version, which is they all must be lawyers, Mr. President. So that's the effect, Mr. President.
That's a very good amendment. So now the option is between, is members of the Philippine Bar and of the or a certified public
Yes,
accountant.
and then, Mr. President, just to really complete the styling, on line 15, on page 9, delete the phrase members of the Philippine Bar in good standing, as well as the commas which are preceding.
So how would, just for clarity, how would the paragraph
Ito na.
be
Yes,
read?
Mr. President.
Starting from line 14.
The National Taxpayer Advocate, comma, who is a member of the Philippine Bar in good standing, comma, and Deputy National Taxpayer Advocates, comma,
Shall be,
hindi, mali pala to, sandali.
shall be Filipino citizens?
Yes, Mr. President, sandali. Who are members of the Philippine Bar in good standing or certified public accountants, comma,
Is that after the shall be Filipino citizens? Unahin natin yung Filipino
That's
citizens.
styling, Filipino citizens.
Subject to style,
Shall be Filipino citizens,
comma,
then with at least 10 years of practice in the field of taxation with proven integrity and competence and must not have been convicted of any crime involving a violation of any tax laws and rules or of any crime involving moral turpitude. Yes, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
subject to style.
Yes, this one really subject to style, which we will now, the task we will pass to the Senate Secretary, Mr. President.
Yes. But the idea is that the Deputy National Taxpayers Advocate shall be, can either be a member of the bar of good standing or a certified public accountant.
The
As
deputy.
far as the deputy is concerned, yes.
At any rate, Mr. President, we will see the final, ano naman, ito,
Yes,
final
yes.
before
We
approval
can
on
clean it and we can take it up for second reading. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. President, let me just note that the Filipino citizens pertain to both the National Taxpayer Advocate and the Deputy National Taxpayer Advocate.
Definitely.
So that's why it's written after the Deputy Taxpayer Advocate.
Okay,
Mr. President.
this is accepted by the.
Yes,
gentleman?
accepted, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved. Any more at page 9?
Page 9 is on the appointment term and rank, Mr. President. Act din pa. Ako to.
Shall the amendment be proposed by Senator Gatchalian, the sponsor, or the minority floor leader?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's suspended.
Suspended.
President, to carry on section 10, on appointment, term, and rank, on page 9, line 26, delete the comma after the word reappointment and replace it with a period. So move, Mr. President.
Period. Okay. No objection to the motion and amendment. Amendment is approved.
On page 9, lines 27 to 28, delete the phrase subject to the provision of the Civil Service Commission, CSC, rules on retirement. So move, Mr. President.
What is the
Retirement
amendment?
age.
Is to delete?
Delete, Mr. President. Retirement age. Rules on retirement age. So move, Mr. President.
Okay, how will that line be now? So you will take out the whole line 27 and 28?
Correct.
Okay, and the line 26 will end with a period?
Yes, Mr. President, correct.
There being no objection to the amendment, amendment's approved.
So on page 10, line 1, after the word serve, replace the phrase the unexpired term of the predecessor. The new appointee, if serving the first term of the predecessor, can be reappointed, subject to the rules set forth in this section, with a fresh term of 3 years shall be eligible for one reappointment. So let me just read, Mr. President, to be accurate. In case of vacancy arising from retirement, resignation, removal, permanent incapacity, or death of the National Taxpayer Advocate or Deputy National Taxpayer Advocate, the President shall appoint a successor to serve a fresh term of 3 years and shall be eligible for one reappointment.
Go
So-
ahead, yes.
So on page 10, this is the last, Mr. President, for this page. On page 10, line 4.
I haven't acted on it, so this is the same amendment.
No, different. This is a different amendment.
Let me
Mr.
just
President.
act on it.
All
There
right.
being no objection to the amendment? Oh, yes.
Styling amendment, Mr. President.
Yes, please proceed.
Because the previous paragraph uses the phrase a term of 3 years with one reappointment. Is the sponsor amenable to adopting that
Yes, Mr.
that
President.
phraseology? So
Yeah, phraseology.
to make it a fresh term of 3 years with one reappointment. So that we will be consistent with our,
Yes, Mr. President, I accept, Mr. President.
so
The
as
amendment.
amended.
So the amendment of the minority floor leader is accepted and it's approved. So please proceed, Senator.
On page 10, line 4, insert a new paragraph which reads, the appointment and reappointment of the National Taxpayer Advocate and Deputy National Taxpayer Advocates shall be subject to the mandatory retirement age provided under the Civil Service Commission CSC rules. So moved, Mr. President.
No objection from the minority floor leader. It's no objection from the body. Amendment's accepted. Please proceed. Senator Gatchalian.
Mr. President, it's the,
Minority floor leader's turn.
Okay, so now we go to page 10, section 12 on the submission of annual reports. Page 10, line 20. After the phrase furnish the, replace the word secretary with secretaries. And on line 21, before the word finance, insert the phrase justice and finance. So that's the
Okay.
purpose, Mr. President.
I
What does
accept,
the
Mr.
sponsor
President.
say? Sponsor accepts, therefore the amendment's approved.
So the report will now have to be furnished to two department secretaries, Mr. President. Wait, next ba tayo isa? So on page 10, line 24, change the word secretary to secretaries and also insert the phrase justice and prior to the word finance, but for the same reason, Mr. President.
Yes. And no objection from
And
the
then,
sponsor?
just to complete the paragraph, Mr. President, and then replace, on line 25, replace the phrase his or her comment with their comments, Mr. President.
I accept, Mr. President.
Amendment's accepted and approved.
Ano pa ako?
Nothing else
My
on
next-
page 10?
Section 13 na ba?
So, Mr. President,
Page 11
okay.
na.
On page 13, on penalties,
Mr. President, page 11.
Good.
okay.
Please,
Page 11 ako.
please proceed, Minority Floor Leader. Is that
sorry.
an ulterior amendment?
Sorry, Mr. President, I made a mistake. Mine is on page 11, line 9, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Any other in page 10, Minority
No more,
Leader?
Mr. President.
Line 5 ako. Mayag ba siya dito? Mayag siya.
His is already page 11, Minority Leader.
1 minute, Mr. President, because
Yes.
we might be able to join our amendments.
Minute suspension, Mr. President.
Suspended for 1 minute.
Hindi. Put ko natin. Saan tayo ba? Saan ba tayo? Okay. Page 11, Mr. President. Tama ba? Page 11, line 5. After the word act, insert comma and the phrase except section 5N, comma, Mr. President. So the purpose of the amendment is to differentiate section 5N and not let it be penalized the same way as the other parts of section 5. But we will, in the next amendment, we will provide for what the penalty would be for the violation of 5N, Mr. President. So I so move, Mr. President.
Accept, Mr. President.
Accepted by the author and sponsor. The amendment is carried. Please proceed.
Okay, page 11, on line 8. Now, insert a new sentence. The violation of section 5N shall be penalized under the provisions of Republic Act number 6713. Period, Mr. President.
Accept, Mr. President.
Accepted by the sponsor.
6713, I'm accept.
Accepted by the sponsor. Therefore, the amendment's accepted and approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me just explain my acceptance to that proposal by our good minority leader. Section 5N is the right to quality service and assistance, Mr. President. So the concept here, Mr. President, for this particular right will be the penalty will be under Republic Act number 6713, or the title of this measure is an act establishing a code of conduct and ethical standards for public officials and employees to uphold the time-honored principle of public office being a public trust, granting incentives and rewards for exemplary service, enumerating prohibited acts and transactions, and providing penalties for violation thereof and for other purposes. So, Mr. President, the concept here is to align the right to quality service and assistance to an existing law, which covers existing penalties as well, Mr. President. So we accept the proposal of our good minority leader, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. President, same page 11, line 28.
Mr. President.
Anterior amendment.
Anterior amendment, Mr. President. On page 11, line 9, insert a new paragraph containing provision on prescription to read as follows. Violations penalized by this act shall prescribe after 12 years. Prescription shall begin to run from the day of the commission of the violation of the law, and if the same be not known at the time, from the discovery thereof, and the institution of judicial proceeding for its investigation and punishment, provided that the prescription shall be interrupted when proceedings are instituted against the guilty person, and shall begin to run again if the proceedings are dismissed for reasons not constituting jeopardy. I so move, Mr. President.
What say the minority floor leader? No, is it accepted? No objection from the body? Amendment said approved.
Okay, Mr. President, page 11, line 28.
28.
Yes, Mr. President. Replace the acronym of the DOF with the DOJ.
Yes.
As the lead agency now for the IRR. And before DBM, insert DOF and a comma, Mr. President. So,
Before the letters DBM,
Yes.
it's the DOF.
yes, Sir President. So in effect, the effect of the amendment is the DOJ is the lead agency to craft the implementing rules and regulations, and the DOF is still part of the departments to be consulted, Mr. President. I so move, Mr. President.
Accepted, Mr. President.
Therefore, no objection, accepted by the sponsor, amendment is approved.
That would be the end of my amendments, Mr. President.
I don't have any more amendments, Mr.
We
President.
thank the minority floor leader and the sponsor for their patience, their time, and their effort
Mr.
to make
President,
this bill better.
let me thank the good minority leader for his suggestions, and it's truly made our bill sharper, more cohesive, as well as more logical. And this is a testament, Mr. President, that even during the break, this representation and the minority leader worked together to come up with a bill that will serve the interests of our taxpayers.
And I would like to take note of the Filipiniana costume of VG Dasil today. I think he knows that we're going to pass it today. That's why he's wearing that wonderful, beautiful Barong Tagalog.
Have to put on record,
Made of multiple colors.
Mr. President, we have to also put on record that he is one of the he's one of the original Senate Sentinel members, Mr. President.
Really?
As a basketball player, Mr.
Oh,
President.
that's good to know.
Yes,
And
Mr.
he's the head of our he's the head of our Senate tax think tank. It's called,
What
the
he's
official
wearing
name is.
today defines how he plays basketball too, Mr. President. Very colorful.
Ano pangalan niya? Senate Tax Study and Research Office, where we
Yes,
get
Mr.
all our information on
Mr.
tax.
President, before we leave the subject matter, so I'd also like to commend our sponsor and congratulate him for filing this bill, Mr. President, for even thinking about the subject matter of granting our taxpayers very clear rights, and then the tax revenue authorities very clear obligations. Something to look forward to. There's also a new body now to assist the taxpayers for their tax concerns. So congratulations to our sponsor, and thank you too for your patience, sir.
Yes, thank you to both gentlemen. You worked hard. I know you both worked hard during the break. And this became a priority measure by the LEDAC. So congratulations. It's a priority.
Yes, Mr.
It's
President.
one of the 20 that they're asking us to pass before December. So maraming salamat sa inyo lahat. So there being no other members to make amendments?
President,
close
but
the period?
before I make the proper motion, Mr. President, may I just put on record the intention of this representation together with Senator Cynthia Villar to be made co-authors of this measure, Mr. President.
Yes, and myself included.
Together
because
with
I'm
the
already
Senate
an author.
President and
Did we file? If
Senate
not,
President.
include me as well, please.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. President. Let me just put that on record. With that, Mr. President, no other individual amendments. I move to close the period of individual amendments. So
There
moved,
being
Mr.
no
President.
objection, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1806. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, Senate Bill number 1806 is approved on second reading.
Thank you and congratulations to the authors, Mr. President.
Congratulations.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1806.
Consideration of Senate Bill number 1806 is suspended.
Mr. President, I am not sure, because the Senate President pro temp is looking at me, Mr. President, and
Maybe it's good to stay.
I
We
wonder
can call
if
it
she
a night.
still wanted to deliver a privileged speech, and I'm more than willing to stay, Mr. President, and listen to her.
Yeah.
But she's not nodding her head, Mr. President. So I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Wednesday, July 26, 2023. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, July 26, 2023. Have a good evening, everyone.